Hey guys, Firemind's Foresight here with my first Magic the Gathering deck tech. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through one of my standard decks with you. I don't have a sideboard for this deck at the moment, so what I do have is a small stack of cards over here to the side that I want to run through with you guys here at the end of the tech and kind of get some opinions on some stuff and see if you guys can suggest anything for me to help out with the problems I'm having, which I will state for you as we go through this small stack here. But first of all, I want to get into the deck. It is a standard Izzet control deck right now. It basically runs around Guttersnipe and Goblin Electromancer, which I find can be a really good combination. Guttersnipe deals damage when you cast instants or sorceries, and Goblin Electromancer makes those instants and sorceries cost less to cast. So we'll go ahead and jump into the tech here, starting with our land. And sorry about the blurry video. I'm using my Flip Ultra camera right now until I can free up some space on my other digital camera. So this first video is going to be a little blurry, so I will read these cards to you so you know what they do, being as it's hard for you to read them. But first up is Steam Vents, and if you don't know what Steam Vents is, it is the shock land for Izzet Red-Blue out of Return to Ravnica. And it comes into the battlefield tapped unless you pay 2 life, but it does tap for a red or a blue. So a playset of Steam Vents, and one of my cards here is stuck. Okay, Steam Vents there. Next is Sulfur Falls, and this is a dual land. It's not a shock land, out of Innistrad, and it comes into the battlefield tapped unless you control an island or a mountain. So a playset there is Sulfur Falls. Next up, the rest of here is just basic land, 7 islands, and 7 basic mountains. So the deck does run with 22 lands. Moving into creatures here, this is Augur of Bolas. He is a 2-drop, 1/3, 1 blue and 1 colorless mana. And when Augur of Bolas enters the battlefield, you get to look at the top 3 cards of your library, and you can reveal an instant or sorcery card. Put that card into your hand, and the other 2 cards go onto the bottom of your library in any order. Now, this deck is very spell heavy as far as instants and sorceries go, so there's not a lot of creatures. So the cool thing about him is he's letting you draw into a spell that you can use, and also he becomes a 1/3 chump blocker at that point. So 3 toughness for 2 cost that lets you draw into an instant or sorcery. I believe is pretty good for this build here. So I do have a playset of Augur of Bolas. Next up, one of the main creatures in the deck here is Goblin Electromancer. He's a 2-drop, 2/2, 1 blue and 1 red, and instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less colorless mana to cast. Really sweet. A lot of the spells are only 2 cost, so he makes them cost 1. There are a few here with overloads and stuff like that, so he comes in handy when you have multiple copies of him out onto the field, but a playset of Goblin Electromancer. Next guy we're going to look at here is Guttersnipe. He's probably one of my favorite cards, and his flavor text is really cool. He's a 3-drop, 1 red, 2 colorless for a 2/2, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Guttersnipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. Now I know you can redirect that damage to Planeswalkers is what I've been told, but being as he reads, deals 2 damage to each opponent, I wonder if he deals damage to Planeswalkers and the player. So if any of you guys have an answer out there for that question, which I'm asking you, go ahead and leave me a comment or something and let me know. And just because I want to, his flavor text reads like this. He wants to watch Ravnica burn, 1 soul at a time. I think that's really cool. It really goes along with the artwork of the card. But playset there, Guttersnipe. Next thing we're going to look at is Guild Leader for Izzet. This is Niv-Mizzet Dracogenius. He's a 6-drop, 2 red, 2 blue, 2 colorless for a 5/5 flying creature. And whenever he deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card, which is nice because he swings in the air for 5 and you're drawing a card. And he also has an ability that lets you tap a blue and a red, and he can deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So if you do use his ability, you want to mainly hit the player with it so you can draw into that card. You can also use it to get rid of creatures, I suppose, but you'd be tapping down a lot of mana to get rid of some of the bigger stuff. So I mainly hit opponents with him. and I only really ever hit opponents with him if I don't have something in my hand that I'm able to cast, or if I'm pretty confident that my opponent, say they're top decking and I'm pretty sure that they're not going to draw into something that's going to be hurtful towards me, then I'll use his ability that way. But I do run a 2 of Niv-Mizzet. Next up is the Planeswalker that I use here in this deck. This is Chandra the Firebrand, and she is a 4-drop, 1 red and 3 colorless, and she enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty counters to start. And her +1 ability is she deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And her -2 is really where you want to stay with her in this deck. It says when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell and you may choose new targets for the copy, which is really cool. Electromancer is going to make that first spell you cast cost less. You get to copy that spell, you get to choose new targets for the spell, and Guttersnipe is going to deal damage off the spell, and I do believe he deals damage off the copy too. If I'm wrong, let me know, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. So I do run a 2 of Chandra here. Moving into our instants and sorceries in the deck, first up we have Unsummon, which is a 1 blue instant speed, and it lets you bounce a creature, which is cool. They summon in something, you return it to their hand, you deal damage from Guttersnipe, and you're basically slowing your opponent down by doing that. So 3 of Unsummon. Next up is Think Twice, which is a 2-drop instant, 1 blue and 1 colorless, and it lets you draw a card, which is nice. You're drawing in for potentially 1 if you have a Goblin Electromancer out, and it has a flashback for 3, which lets you recast it and you exile it. And this could cost you less too with the right amount of Electromancers, and I know for sure that Guttersnipe does deal damage off the flashback, so that's nice. So we do run a 4 of Think Twice. Getting into some of our burn here, this is Searing Spear, 2-drop instant, 1 red, 1 colorless, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Now, we do run a playset. Being as we don't run a lot of creatures in the deck, we're going to use our burn here to keep our opponent's creatures off the field, either with Unsummon or Searing Spear or whatever else we have here that I will be showing you. So try and use your burn to hit your opponent, or your opponent's creatures, as opposed to your opponent, and let Guttersnipe or Niv do the damage to their life. Next, we're looking at Mizzium Mortars, a 2-drop sorcery for 1 red and 1 colorless, and it deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control. And it does have an overload for 6, 3 red and 3 colorless, and it would deal 4 damage to each creature you don't control as opposed to target. So the cool thing about this is in this deck is with Goblin Electromancer, this could possibly cost you only the 3 red to cast it, and at that point it is a board sweep. 4 damage to each creature you don't control, so that's nice. So I do run 4 of Mizzium Mortars. Next, we're going to look at Izzet Charm, which is a 2-drop instant speed, 1 red and 1 blue, and it has 3 choices here. You can counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. Good early game, also good if your opponent taps out to cast something that's not a creature. Or Izzet Charm deals 2 damage to target creature, also good being as we don't have a lot of blockers, so this can get something off the field, and Guttersnipe will deal damage off that as well. Or it lets you draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. And where that would come in handy is if you're sitting on stuff in your hand, say you got 2 land, Izzet Charm, draw 2 cards, dump the land. Or if you're sitting on Think Twice, you can Izzet Charm, draw 2 cards, dump the Think Twice, dump the land, and still be able to cast Think Twice from the graveyard. So 3 of Izzet Charm, very versatile, and all 3 abilities are relevant in this deck. Next is Dissipate, 3-drop instant, 2 blue and a colorless, and it lets you counter target spell, which is cool. It's not specific to creature or instant or sorcery, it just says counter target spell. And if that spell is countered this way, you exile it instead of putting it into the graveyard. Nice. It could cost you the 2 blue with Goblin Electromancer out, so that's cool. And next is Rewind, which I'm not too sure about. I'd like to have maybe 2 more Dissipates instead of Rewind, but it is a 4-drop instant, and you counter target spell and then untap up to 4 lands. So if it does resolve, if it does work out right, you get to untap those 4 lands. And another cool thing, I guess, here with this deck is with Goblin Electromancer, this spell costs less. So with 2 Electromancers, it could cost you just the 2 blue, So you cast it for 2, and then you get to untap four of your lands, which I think is pretty cool. But it doesn't really work out that way very often. So that's the main deck here. It does fare pretty well against other things. I have a friend at work who plays a mill, Dimir mill, and this just destroys his mill. I played against mono red goblins, and it does fairly well against the goblins. I played against other Izzet decks, and it does fairly well against those. The only thing I really have trouble with is aggro heavy decks, so stuff with lots of creatures that swing in and come at me. So what I'm going to do now is I have some cards here off to the side that I want to look at with you guys. I am trying to build a sideboard for this deck, and with Dragon's Maze out now, there are some new cards that I would consider main boarding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these cards with you guys and get your opinions on them and see if you can maybe suggest some better things for me. I am trying to go USA control with this deck, so there are going to be some white cards in here that we're going to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it here. The first thing I'm looking at is Essence Scatter, which is a 2-drop instant, and it lets you counter target creature spell for 1 blue and 1 colorless. Now, the reason I would do this is trying to be more versatile with the spells in my deck, trying to keep my opponent guessing. So I'm assuming that people wouldn't expect to see an Essence Scatter mainboarded or even sideboarded for that matter, but that's the reason behind having this here. The next thing I want to look at is Weapon Surge, which is out of Dragon's Maze. This is a really cool card. It's a 1 red instant, and target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. It also has an overload for 2, which would give each of your creatures +1/+0 and first strike. This would be cool to sideboard if I am playing against an aggro heavy deck and I do have to block with my creatures. I could give them first strike and I could beef up their power a little bit. So this is something I was considering sideboarding. Moving on next is Angel's Mercy, which is a 4-drop instant, 2 white and 2 colorless, and it lets you gain 7 life. Now, I know about Sphinx's Revelation, and that is definitely something that I would want over this card, but I don't have any right now. So this would kind of be a placeholder for that if I did decide to use this at all. So that's why this is here. Now the next card we're going to look at is Shielded Passage, which is a 1 white instant, and it lets you prevent all damage that would be dealt to target creature this turn. Where this would come in handy is with Guttersnipe, because as you move along in your game with your opponent, they're going to catch on to what you're trying to do with Guttersnipe and Goblin Electromancer, and they're going to try to destroy those creatures. So the reasoning behind this card would be to save those creatures from dying. We want to keep our Guttersnipes and we want to keep our Electromancers on the field as long as possible. So this is another card I was thinking of using in this deck. Another problem I run into is enchantments, especially if I'm playing against aggro Boros decks with their Assembled Legions. That is when I really get my butt handed to me. So this is Erase, which is a 1-drop instant, and it lets you exile a target enchantment for 1 white. So this is something I was thinking of using in the deck also. Next is Negate, which is a 2-drop instant, and it lets you counter target non-creature spell. Again, specific, but like I said, I'm trying to be more versatile with my counter spells. So Negate. This is another cool card that came out of Dragon's Maze. This is Nivix Cyclops, and he's a 3-drop 1/4 defender, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 colorless. And the cool thing about him is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, he gets +3/+0 until end of turn and can attack this turn as though it didn't have defender. So with him, he's a 1/4 defender for 3, which is, as far as walls would go, it's not the greatest wall. But the fact that when you cast an instant or sorcery, it makes him a 4/4 that is able to attack if you want to, I think is what makes him good. So this is something I was considering mainboarding as well. For the defender ability, which I guess doesn't really matter if it's a 1/4, it can still block with it if it doesn't have defender, but he is a 1/4 defender, so he would be used for blocking. unless my opponent leaves their self open, in which case, say I could spear them. They would take 3 from the spear, they would take 2 from Guttersnipe, and then I would swing in for 4 with Niv-Mizzet Cyclops. So another possibility here. Next is Syncopate, which is really good early game. Or say if your opponent taps down to very few land. But it's a 1 blue and X for instant speed. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X, and it also exiles the way Dissipate does. So I was considering running Syncopate in the deck too. And then I was looking through creatures, trying to find something that people are afraid of. And this is pretty much the only creature that I could think of that people just don't want to do anything to. And this is Boros Reckoner. 3-drop for hybrid red or white, and he is a 3/3. Whenever he's dealt damage, he deals that much damage to target creature or player, and you can tap a hybrid red or white to give him first strike until end of turn. He's just an awesome card. He's very well rounded, and I know there's a combo with another card which I can't think of the name of right now, but I know you get your opponent to the sweet spot of 13 life, and that card would deals 13 damage to target creature, so you would deal that damage to your own Boros Reckoner, and then redirect, not redirect, but you would deal that damage also to your opponent to win the game. That's something I was thinking about doing, but I'm not sure. So Boros Reckoner. I'm also looking at Devil's Play, which I would put in place of Mizzium Mortars. Not all of them, but a few, and it's a 1 red X sorcery, and it deals X damage to target creature or player, and it has a flashback of 3 red and X, so that's nice. Another thing I'm looking at, this would be a sideboard card. This is Counterflux for a 3-drop instant, 2 blue and 1 red. It can't be countered by spells or abilities, and it lets you counter target spell you don't control, and it does have an overload for 4. But this is definitely something that I would sideboard. I wouldn't mainboard this. This would be used if I play another deck that's counter heavy. Because they can't. This can't be answered. It can't be countered by spells or abilities. So that's something I was thinking of sideboarding. When Dragon's Maze dropped, I bought 2 booster packs, and in the second pack I opened, I almost crapped myself because I got Ralzarek. He is just freaking amazing. He's a 4-drop, 1 red, 1 blue, 2 colorless. He comes with 4 loyalty counters to start. And this is the reason I was thinking of using him in this control, is because he deals with permanents for his +1 ability. He lets you tap a target permanent and then untap another target permanent, which I think is pretty cool. He also has a -2, which lets you deal 3 damage to target creature or player. And his -7 is just ridiculous. You flip 5 coins, and you take an extra turn after this one for each coin that comes up heads. So you could potentially play for another 5 turns after this. And at that point, really, your opponent's going to sweep their cards up, because what are they going to do? You get 5 more turns in a row that they can't really do anything. So he is definite win condition if you can get him with enough loyalty counters. So Ralzarek I was really considering putting in. And another thing being, as I don't run a lot of creatures, this is Aetherize. It's a 4-drop instant for 1 blue and 3 colorless, and it lets you return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. I've never played with this card before, and in theory it does sound like it'd be pretty cool. It would work well, just because I don't run a lot of creatures, and this would return all attacking creatures. So I was considering Aetherize. I'm not sure either way. And another thing I was looking at, this is the last card. This is Izzet Staticaster, and she's a 3-drop for a 0/3, 1 red, 1 blue, 1 colorless. She has Flash, which if you don't know what that is, it lets you play her anytime you could cast an instant spell. She also has Haste, and she taps and deals 1 damage to target creature and each other creature with the same name as that creature. So this would be cool. I know a lot of zombies decks run a lot of these little small creatures with 1 toughness and the same name. So she'd be cool to get rid of those. She'd also be a 3 toughness creature, so defending as well. I'm not sure, you know. In theory, she seems like she could really do something, do some damage, you know, but that's why I'm asking you guys. So these are the cards I'm considering looking at. There are some other cards I know of that are really expensive that I would like to have for this red, white, blue, like Sphinx's Revelation or Planar Cleansing, stuff like that. but I just don't have the money for them right now. Restoration Angels and Snapcasters, and I don't want to play the same thing everyone else does. I want to have my own twist on it, so this is what I'm thinking about right now. If you guys have any suggestions, if you can point me in the direction of different cards, that would be good. If you have any comments or criticisms, go ahead and leave me a comment. I'll try and respond to them to the best of my Magic knowledge, which isn't that great, so bear with me. And again, if there's enough interest in what I'm doing here with these deck techs and stuff like that, there will be more to come. I do have plenty of other decks here stacked up, ready to be teched out for you guys. And you will notice that all of them are in standard. That's what I play. That's what my local card shop plays mostly, is standard and commander, but I'm not... I haven't really looked much into commander. I know that standard is one of my favorite play styles, so that's where I'm at with that. So again, leave me comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and this is Firemind's Foresight. Have a great day.